Hey everyone. I want to talk today about emotional security and communication, and that communication cannot exist on any level and be successful unless you have emotional security that the people feel either in the situation or even in their own life. So, a lot of times people will expect communication right away. You're not communicating. And people get frustrated at people because they're not communicating. But a person might not be able to communicate, and it might be due to their own lack of feeling emotional safe in their life. It might not have to do with you, it might not have to do with the situation that is happening. The reason I'm talking about this today is because the lack of emotional safety and security that my daughter has grown up with, and how she lost what emotional security and safety she had when she was 7 and was completely isolated and taken from me, her older sibling, who she spent every day with. She lost all of that at age 7. She was isolated from everyone who was in her life on my side. Anyone who was friends with me, anyone who was close and I called family, was not allowed to remain in her life. And that was due to whatever insecurities maybe her father had. And that level of trauma that she endured is why, when I seen her for the first time in 10 years, I knew I had to be cautious and I had to be supporting. But at the same time, I know that I have to be honest and true to myself, my own emotions, my own hurt, and I have to be fair to everyone. I don't have successful communication with my daughter, who's 17 right now. Um, but I am working toward it. What we fail to see is sometimes we expect on our own perceptions only. And people that downplay the word empathy forget that sometimes empathy includes looking at the perceptions of the other person. That doesn't make you weak, that makes you intelligent. That makes you able to use a part of your brain to be considerate toward other people and what they might be going through. I teach my children and I tell my children that conflict cannot happen unless two people engage in an activity that produces conflict. It takes two to have conflict. I teach my children this. I stand on it. I hold myself accountable for my own inability to step back during the court custody battle, my own inability to work through my own emotions, my own shock about what was happening, and not being able to handle it better so that it didn't explode the way it did. And I do hold myself accountable for that. I hold myself accountable for it, but I hold my daughter's father accountable. I hold his wife accountable. I hold everyone accountable for the wrong because no one stepped in. No one stepped in and no one said, this is the truth. This is no one close to him. Maybe that's because no one he allows close enough to influence him when he is in a moment of anger. When he decides he wants something to go a certain way, that's how it goes. I've related my daughter's father to P. Diddy, um, and I may do that for a while. And I may do that for a while because the similarities are striking. The similarities are mind blowing to me when I look back at them. But there was no emotional security that my daughter has had um, since she was 7 and since she was removed from me and taken away from every emotional security she had. When I got to see her for the first time, it was because she requested to see me. Um, she reached out to me, and we had gradually started building a line of communication. Um, we started um, baby steps into trying to develop a relationship again. And me being very careful and cautious has navigated that and still navigating it to this day. And the reason being is I have to be honest and true to myself about my emotions, about how I feel. I have to be truthful and honest about my oldest child. And I have to do it in a manner, though, that allows my daughter to know that she is safe to tell me how she feels. And that when she tells me how she feels, she will not be belittled. She will not be attacked. She will not be met with unwelcoming behavior that tells her her opinion doesn't matter. So I have no successful communication as of to date with my daughter. Um, I've taken the next step forward to ask her about what her memories were. I have taken the next step forward to tell her during our last meeting before I came back to my home. I was in Kentucky for 1 week. I flew me and my two youngest children out there to be around and to open up that line of communication, to see my daughter for the first time in 10 years. And it was difficult. It was, it was so hard that after the event, I wanted to get back on a plane and come back home. I didn't want to be there anymore. The reason being is because when I first seen my daughter, um, it was at a zoo. I had worked it out that it should be on neutral territory and it should be a place that my two youngest children are familiar with without being in a familiar situation. So they've grown up seeing pictures and hearing me talk about their older sister, Milena, and that Milena lives with her dad in Kentucky and that she lives there because that's where her dad wants her to be. And I've been very honest and inclusive about her in a non negative manner to my two youngest children. And I have to be cautious because my two youngest children also need emotional security to remain in their life. They can't have and consistency in a situation with a person that I hope and pray they will have a bond with one day. I hope that they have a relationship. I tell my children my life ideally will not be as long as their life. And if everything works according to plan, I will pass before all of them. And I want them to all have each other to love and support and encourage and to give themselves family and community. So the first time I seen my daughter, I had my oldest son's family, some members of their family there. They were there to support me, and I had a friend of mine there as well. And it was just my daughter's father and his wife and my daughter. And she asked to bring her boyfriend, and I was like, yeah, yeah, whatever you need. Yes, yes. I just want this to be a moment for us to enjoy. And during that time frame, um, we had waited because Brad was not on any schedule of anyone else's convenience but his own. So, and I, that's a truth. That's not an anger. That's, I try and tell myself to be fair and not angry toward him still. But there's still moments that we all waited, and we were walking around the zoo. So everyone had to eat, and everyone was at the other end of the zoo than the entrance by the time my daughter and her father and her stepmom. It's hard for me to call her mom, even though that is her mom, because in my mind I will always be her number one mom. Um, but they were at the entrance, and I was making my way there to meet my friend because she was running later as well. And when we were eating, I had my daughter tell me that she was um, at the entrance. So I was making my way there to see her for the first time in 10 years. I was so happy to see her. It was the most wonderful thing to see her just as a grown young woman, um, just as adorable as she has always been. And I went up to her. I tried being as loving and yet controlling. I don't want to overwhelm someone who is went through a lot. Not just myself, but her. So as her mother, I wanted to be respectful. So as I ran up and gave her a hug, I quickly noticed that her hug was not as embracing. Her hug was very stiff. Her father and her stepmom was there, and they were watching, and she was very stiff. So I immediately backed away, and just backed away friendly, not like mean, but just backed away and patted her shoulders and told her I loved her, and um, had to be respectful because she didn't have enough emotional security in her history and in her past, especially with me in this situation, to know how to handle it. And at the same time, I also wanted to be respectful and not overwhelm her with my own emotions, but yet be fair to myself. Understanding that emotional security and emotional safety is something someone has to do to communicate, can sometimes be the hardest for us to navigate. But it is something that we need to be aware of. I have since spoken to my daughter, and I sent her a text. And the reason being is I sent her a text to allow her to read and reread and to have it for her own record about how hard and difficult it was for me to have her very standoffish and very protective in her behavior from me as her mom. Um, I also was very truthful about wanting her to know that she could tell me anything. I wanted her to feel safe, and I wanted her to understand that I do hold her father accountable for all these years that we've been apart. Because all of these years we've been apart, I have begged him and I have called him and I have done everything I can to see her and to have the brokenness mended. But I have been denied all of these years. For 10 years, I was denied. And he had sole custody. I had no legal ground. None. I had spent over $90,000 in attorney fees alone. That's not time off of work. That's not driving. That's not anything else related to how expensive it was to do court battles with her father. There was $90,000 that was spent on attorney fees alone in 1 year. 1 year. And all I did with that 90,000 is I bought a little bit more time with my daughter until he accomplished what he had meant to accomplish. He has since told me that he never meant to take her from me. He also told me that he doesn't remember a lot from that time. Um, and I know that that is true. He doesn't remember a lot from that time, and there are reasons why. And those reasons are the same reason that I would not stay with him. It's the reason that I decided living in a small, broken down, run down little farmhouse, living on minimal money was better than having an open checkbook, as he told me before. Have an open checkbook. Just be happy. You'll hear me say that a lot because I think it rings in my head about you have every woman's dream. Just be happy. What's wrong? But I didn't have every woman's dream. I didn't have honesty. I didn't have true security. And that was something that allowed me to see where our priorities differed and where our home front could not be the same. My lack of ability to communicate with him any further and what led to the court battles was due to my inability to know from my history with him. I had no emotional security with him. Nothing I said would be heard. Nothing I said would be respected. That is the man who raised my daughter for the last 10 years of her life. And no matter what, I know that I have to provide her with the emotional security and honesty that is true to myself, my emotions, and hers as well as the rest of our family, the rest of our community. When I talk about community, I talk about people were not allowed to be around Milena when she was taken from me. People reached out to me and said their child was no longer allowed to openly play with her. That her stepmom would pull her away at ball games, aggressively pull her away at ball games, because that was someone close to me. Emotional security and emotional safety must be a part of someone's life before they can communicate. My daughter does not have that yet. And I say yet because I strategically prioritize giving her safety and security and honesty with me. A part of that means that you have to peel back the onion. And a part of that means that you can't brush anything under a rug. You must meet it head on when it is time. And you must be true and thoughtful and considerate to everyone. I have never lashed out toward her father since he took her. I've never yelled at him. I've never been mean to him since he took her. And a part of that is because when you're punched in the gut really hard, I don't know if you guys ever experienced that. I have. Sometimes because of my own mischievous fighting, honestly. That when you're younger, I don't know, immature. Um, when you're punched in the gut and you have no breath left, that's how I have functioned a lot with interacting with Brad. Um, a lot of times it is the punch in the gut that has probably protected me from having more conflict from him, because I haven't lashed out, and I won't now, because after all these years I've made my plan about the future for my children. 3 out of 4 of my children have a bond with me. 3 out of 4 of my children openly and in a healthy manner are bonded with me. 3 out of 4. But I will not stop until it is 4 out of 4. And I will do everything I can to build that so that my daughter knows that she can communicate with me and that she can share her memories. That when she wants to talk about what her memories were and how it hurt her, she can talk to me. When court battles happen, children lose their emotional security and safety. They shut down, they can't communicate. They can't communicate when they need to communicate the most, because they're small and they're innocent and they're young and they're vulnerable. So a part of communication is a part of realizing everyone who's attempting to communicate must have emotional security and emotional safety. I'm working on providing that for my daughter, letting her know that at least she has that with me, and allowing her to know that she can talk to me about anything, but also knowing that I will tell my feelings and my emotion, and I will tell my story. because I deserve that right as well as she does. My 20-year-old deserves that right as much as he has, and I will embrace it and honor his side. And I do, because he does speak to me about what he thought, why he doesn't reach out to her anymore. He thinks that she's happy and fine, and he doesn't want to bother her. And I just listen and encourage him that sometimes people think that because they haven't had the full story and because they haven't felt safe. So maybe we can all remember that a little bit more. Emotional safety and security must be provided in order for successful communication to exist. And I am striving toward that for my daughter and for me. It is not easy, it is heart wrenching. It breaks me down emotionally very often, but it is a goal and it is a mission that I have for myself and my children and for our future generations. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. I hope that everyone can also remember this. When we're demanding communication and when we want to have communication from someone that we love, it might not be because of what we think. It might just be because their own life has lacked emotional security and safety. And if they have safety and security, maybe they can feel safe to communicate. So, everyone, have a wonderful day. I am headed off to go pick up my youngest from pre K. My day is getting ready to get full and wild and very loud.